Today we're doing a smoked pork shoulder on the Oklahoma Joe Bronco. Let's get started. So you came home with a cheap piece of meat. What were you thinking? You know, you always buy the Boston butts. Sometimes they're on sale, but sometimes you can get a really good deal, maybe on a bun, but usually on this picnic shoulder. Shouldn't be afraid of these. I've used them several times before to make barbecue. They make some great barbecue. It's just the lower part of the shoulder. So I guess you could say we're not eating quite as high on the hog. What I'm going to do with this shoulder, keep wanting to call it a butt. What I'm going to attempt to do with this shoulder is something that I have not done before. I want to get this skin on the back side of this thing nice and crispy. I'm going to salt this meat side just a little bit. I'm not putting too much on here, but look, this is a big piece of meat, so you don't have to worry about overdoing it unless you're really going crazy. And remember, this is Peppercoat barbecue. I like a nice heavy coat of pepper. Remember, you want all the way around the edges. A lot of people use a binder. I don't really see the need for a binder. This meat is nice and moist. The salt and the pepper sticks to it. That salt is going to penetrate down into the meat. Over here on the end where you have this little shank, I'm going to coat this really good with salt. We want this salt to draw the moisture out of this skin on this shank. Pat that in. Let's flip it over on the other side. I'm going to put a lot of salt on here. Okay, heavy on the salt. It will help to draw the moisture to the outside, and hopefully by the time we pull it out in the morning and start a fire, it'll be nice and dry. I'm going to put this on a wired rack and leave it in the fridge overnight. I want to leave the skin up. The reason for that is I just covered it in salt. I don't want that salt just falling off in the bottom of my tray. I like to use wire racks. It allows air to circulate around that meat. I knew the salt would help dry out the skin, but I also knew my typical low and slow method would leave it rubbery. So while I'm trying to decide which smoker to use, what temperature, I grabbed an inspirational bag of pork rinds and my assistant and headed out to the deck for an evening of research. Found a great video from Chud's where he made a pork shoulder with a crunchy skin. I watched some of the whole hog masters like Sam Jones and Rodney Scott, and finally a plan was coming together. I'm going to start by putting a small pecan split in the bottom of my charcoal tray here. I've got a few other things in here that was left over from a cook last week where I fixed a butt, and just some lump charcoal, some pieces of cherry. I'm going to leave those in there. Today I'm going to be using a couple of different things. So I'm going to load up some of this B&B oak charcoal briquettes. I'm also going to put in some of this B&B oak lump charcoal on top. I think the specs on this tray is that it holds about 8 pounds. I usually round it over, so I'm probably getting closer to 9 or 10. If you have one of these Oklahoma Joe Broncos, man, they are absolutely great. You already know that. If you don't have one and you're looking for a drum style smoker, these things are fantastic. You load this tray up and this smoker will run for 10 to 12 hours easy if you're doing butts around 225, 250. We're going to start our fire on one side. I'm going to put a starter block underneath some of these pieces of smaller lump oak so they'll start quicker. This will give us a nice slow burn all the way across. Now we just need to set our fire in the bottom of the drum. It's been about 25 minutes since we started this fire. I'm going to put in my diffuser plate. There are two ways you can put this in. You can turn it on this side. It runs closer to the fire. You can turn it over. This gets you up further away from the fire. The main purpose of this, if you want to use this Oklahoma Joe Bronco as a grill also, you can turn it this way. You can actually set your coal tray on top of this, put a rack up here, and you can grill on this smoker. But for the purpose of today and for smoking, I typically run mine in the low position. I have two racks for this smoker. That comes in handy if you want to use a water pan, or if you are having a larger cook. I've actually done 3 butts at one time on this smoker. I'm setting up my Inkbird thermometer. This is going to be a little different today. Typically I run butts around 225 to 250, but with this, I think we're going to go around 3 to 325 today. It's going to be a little faster cook, and I want that skin to get nice and crispy. I have both of my dampers open all of the way right now because we're trying to get that heat up. Once it hits around that 300, 325 mark, somewhere in that area, we'll come back and we'll get cooking. Our temperatures came up pretty quick. We're up to 307 right now. I'm going to go ahead and close down this damper a little bit, and we're going to get this stabilized, and then we'll bring out the meat. It's been about 15 hours. You can see that salt is doing its job. You can see the juices in the bottom of this pan. And I can tell the difference in the texture of the skin from what it was last night when it went in the fridge. All right, let's load her up. I'm going to be running this skin down today. The thought is that the heat coming up will crisp up that skin. I'm going to put this shank that has skin all the way around the top. I'm going to put it right back here underneath the chimney or the exhaust of this smoker. And so I should get more convection in that area. Hopefully it'll come around and it'll crisp up the skin on that shank also. So we're going to put this little piggy to bed, and we'll check back in an hour or two. While that shoulder smokes, it's a good time for us to get together a sauce. Now you can go to the store and get one, or you can make one at home. So I start with a little vinegar. I cut that with some water. It's about 3/4 vinegar to 1/4 water. Some brown sugar. Ketchup. Pepper. Salt. Garlic powder. Ground mustard. And red pepper flakes. Once you get your ingredients in, we're going to get this good and hot. I don't even bring mine all the way completely to a boil. I usually cut it off right before it starts boiling. So our sauce is good and hot. You can see the steam coming off of it, but it's just before it comes to a boil, and that's where I want it. So I'm going to go ahead, give this a stir, and take it off. It's been a couple hours since we put this pork shoulder on, so we're going to check it out. The temperature on this thing is rocking and rolling at 334 degrees. You can see the smoke that's coming out of there. It is nice and transparent. Here we are 2 hours in. We're already getting a nice bark on this. I typically don't spritz when I'm doing barbecue. On this smoker, you really don't have to. There's no need for a water pan. There's no need for spritzing. Typically, I'll leave a butt on for about 6 hours, then take it off and wrap it. But again, I do those at 225 to 250. We're cooking over 300 today. And I want to make sure that the top of this stays nice and moist. And I'm just going to baste the top of this with some apple cider vinegar. All right, let's give it another hour or so. It's been 4 hours. We're at 304 degrees. Let's see what we got. The skin on this shank still very soft, but I can tell underneath it's getting nice and crispy. I'm going to baste this again with this apple cider vinegar. We're still cooking around 300 to 325. The goal is to get that internal temperature up to 203. I'm not wrapping today, but I'm going to go ahead and stick my Inkbird thermometer down inside here so I can keep a watch on those internals. It's only been a couple of minutes. You can see the temperature of the smoker has already came back up to a little over 300 degrees, and the internal temperature of that pork shank is at 165. It has been 6 hours and 40 minutes, and we are ready. Got some good pullback over here on this bone. I can tell that skin didn't get rendered as much as I would like for it to have, but I was kind of expecting that around that shank. So let's get in the house and see what it looks like underneath. It's a great bark. But what about that crispy skin? I hope you can hear that. So I'm going to scrape some of this excess salt off of the top. We're going to let this set for about 30 minutes and then we'll pull it apart. I got exactly what I was looking for. Look at this crispy skin coming off of here. I mean, it's peeling off like a turtle shell. Let's get this thing pulled apart, chopped up, and ready to serve. Here we are 22 hours later with our crispy skin pulled pork shoulder. You can see all the combinations of the textures, the colors, the smell is absolutely amazing. But now for what's the most important, let's see what it tastes like. I got a little bit of everything on my fork here. I've got some of that crunchy skin on the outside. I've got a piece of that dark bark. That was good. Try it with a little bit of sauce. That crunch in there makes such a difference. And that sauce with the vinegar, the brown sugar, you got that smoke flavor. You see the nice pink color in there, that dark bark. I'm telling you, you start making barbecue like this, you're going to have a house full of friends.